So, according to research, most people will never be quote unquote wealthy. They will never reach or find attainable the lifestyle of the top like 10% of people. $1 million is not enough. Like, for you to actually reach a place of, being able to sustain yourself and retire and carry on for the rest of your life, $1 million for almost all Americans is not enough. It won't be enough with inflation. It won't be enough with medical stuff that will occur in your old age and rise up and cost you. It won't be enough for housing based on the exorbitant rates of housing. Like, there are some countries that have it worse, but our housing crisis is a crisis. Like, almost all throughout American history, income has stayed mostly above the amount of years it would take to get a house paid off at a decent enough rate that it was considered reasonable. It's at the point now where the rate of housing is skyrocketed way past what is expected to be able to be paid off. It's not just that, a person with a median income back in, say, like the 1960s or 70s could pay off their house in like 4 to 5 years, and now it's more like, if they put 100% of their income to the house, which no one does, but that's how they do the math to make it as simple as possible. But now, currently, the median income, even if a person put 100% of the income into the house right now, they would not be able to pay it off in less than like 7 years. It's like literally impossible. Really just gotten worse and worse and worse. And then it's not just housing that's gone up, other expenses have as well. So it makes even less of that income that you can put toward the house than you would have naturally or of your own accord, or however you want to say that. It's not really affordable in certain parts of the United States or even the world that you can afford to do the whole only put 30% of your income toward your housing thing. It's not realistic for a ton of people. And $1 million seems like such a big number when you're poor. But in actuality, $1 million, like if you invested it only into dividend stocks, for instance, $1 million is only going to get you like $40,000 a year, if that. And that's on good years. The thing about stocks is we like to say, oh, look, the S&P 500 has a return usually of 6-7%. Some people say 10% a year, but it's not actually a year. It's averaged out over 10 years. It would have been this much a year. Some years it's way less. And so you have to recognize that you need enough money that you can be functional even when the stock market's having, to pull back and have a bear market instead of a bull market. A bear market means it's pulling back, a bull market means it's pushing forward. So you have to recognize that every year is not actually consistent, even. You're for sure going to get exactly this amount. Now you might say, oh, well, dividends increase each year. Yeah, but they increase by such tiny margins that it's negligible, especially if all you have in the stock market is $1 million. $1 million for in the stock market, and now I'm going to retire on this, is actually a small number comparatively to how much return you need to get to be able to consistently be able to retire. Now, for someone super poor and frugal, absolutely, you can make it work. For sure, there are people who are like, holy crap, right now I'm earning like $20,000 a year. $40,000 a year sounds amazing. But the other thing is with inflation, it's not gonna do that forever. And you might say, well, most of the stocks will grow. I could sell some off every year. That is the recommendation for people who, retire. But in reality, the market is inconsistent. And in reality, there are going to be times when things have to recede back, because the way our market works is it's basically in a cycle of it goes forward and then it pulls back, and then it goes forward and then it pulls back. And certain companies and stuff, they keep going forward through that cycle, and then a whole ton of them fail. You know, the majority of, say, Shopify stores or Etsy stores or whatever stores you want to say, the majority of small businesses, the majority of companies or business ventures or entrepreneurships don't succeed. It's the truth. But we focus in on the ones that do succeed. The most important decision in your life is not, let me get to $1 million and then I'll be set. Because in actuality, $1 million will not make you actually be set. $1 million runs out way faster than what it might feel like it would, and $1 million doesn't retain the same value unless you invest it extremely wisely with no risks or bad things happening at any point in those investments, which is just not realistic. You're gonna make mistakes, things are gonna happen that you couldn't have expected or predicted, and you might say, oh, well, my house is paid off, you know, and I have $1 million. Well, that helps. For sure, that helps. Having housing security plus $1 million, that definitely would make a big difference. But what if your house burns down? Oh, well, I've got insurance. Well, are you going to have to fight with the insurance people? How long is it going to take you to get your insurance payment? Like, you're going to have to live off of the $1 million and take more out of it in the meantime. There's things that happen in life. You could have a medical emergency that you weren't expecting. Something terrible happens to one of your kids and you've got to help them. There's stuff that happens in life, and $1 million is just actually not going to cut it. According to research and according to studies, the second thing I want to say is the most important decision that you can make in your life is actually who you spend your life with. Who you choose to partner with and who you choose to align your life with is actually the most important decision. $1 million, it's not going to cut it, but having the right partner who has the same, you know, mission in life or vision for the future that you do, and has similar morals and ethics as you do, and is open about communicating with you and staying on the same page with stuff, and also it's nice to share a few hobbies, it makes all the world of difference. Having a partner that you're constantly fighting with, that's constantly a source of stress, is gonna shorten your life. It's gonna constrict how much you're able to accomplish. You might only make it to $1 million, and that's it, and that's not enough, because you had a partner who wasn't helping you get there, but actually creating barriers to you getting there. You could have got there a lot sooner and been able to get more, but instead you had to deal with all this other stuff. Life hands you enough hardship as it is. And I'm saying this even from personal experience. I unfortunately have a history of not always choosing the best relationships, and I recognize, you know, after a lot of intensive self-introspection and therapy, that I was choosing people who basically were gonna be not good for me, who would take advantage of me. And I got taken advantage of quite a bit. And it's been hard. I've had to restart my life more than once because I kept getting taken advantage of by women that I chose specifically because I have an issue with feeling unlovable and feeling worthless and feeling like I have to make it up to people that I exist. And that's a personal issue of mine. And so I was choosing women who needed to be rescued or who were having a hard time, giving them the open window to take advantage of me, and me come in and help them. And because I was helping them, they would hopefully appreciate me enough to love me. And that's not how it works. They actually really, really resent you. And they scam you. And they really, 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 you know, don't have any qualms, some of them, about it, and some of them do. Some of them feel really guilty about it, but it's still, you're setting yourself up, if you're like me, and you're picking people because you're hoping that if they appreciate you enough, they'll love you and they'll forgive you for being flawed and being human. That's like the opposite of a good way to choose a relationship. In reality, you want to be pursuing your passions. You want to be doing something that you genuinely care about. And then as you're doing that, you will encounter people. You will encounter people to learn from, people to help teach. You'll encounter people who are as passionate about it as you are, or maybe have just a little bit of an interest in it. But you will encounter people as you're pursuing your own passions, and they will see your passions. And you might just encounter someone who shares some of those passions, shares some of those interests, shares some of those goals for the future, shares some of those ethics and morals, and you actually could be partners, compatible, actual mutual relationship, not one person being, you know, a punching bag and the other person taking advantage, but actual mutual relationship. According to studies, according to reflections on all of this and scientific information, the number one most important decision that you can make in your life, the thing that actually will impact you for the rest of your life and can actually propel you even financially for the rest of your life, is who you pick to be with. It's not $1 million. $1 million is going to run out. It's not trustworthy. $1 million is arbitrary, and it's this arbitrary number that has a lot of zeros on it, but in actuality, every single year loses value due to inflation. Every single year, you have to figure out a new thing to invest it in, or to keep it invested in, or whatever you've got to do, trying to stay ahead of inflation, plus get a little something back to live off of. $1 million is so much money in some ways. It could get you a home. It could pay for a college education. It could get you a purchase of a new business. Like, there are absolutely quality things that you can do with $1 million. But if you're planning to get to $1 million and that's your big goal in life, and once you get to that $1 million, you are set. You're going to retire. You're going to have it together. Every YouTube video you see that says, oh, I went from $500 to $1 million, or oh, I went from, 0 to $1 million. Here's how I'm getting to $1 million. You click on it because that 1 million is tantalizing to you. It's not going to be enough. It's not enough. And even if you do get to that million and you're like not going to retire, $1 million's still not going to be enough. If you pay attention to the people on YouTube who do get to the million, a lot of them stay there. And they didn't stay there because once they got to $1 million, they needed more than $1 million. They needed a new goal. Because the reasons they were getting to $1 million were due to a dissatisfaction with themselves and with their life, to a point where they still felt that once they got to the $1 million. They were hoping the $1 million would fill that gaping hole, and the $1 million didn't, so then they needed more millions. And then they got to 10 million, and 10 million wasn't enough. And then they got to 100 million, and 100 million wasn't enough. And they're just addicted to a game because it's a distraction. Just the same way as a person who's addicted to playing video games. They might be on their freaking Fortnite, Call of Duty, whatever it is, an MMORPG. They're playing the video game, distracting themselves from the things that are painful or upsetting in their life. And there's a certain degree of that it can be a coping method. And then you can take it way too far and it becomes an extreme and an addiction. And it's more socially acceptable to be addicted to gaining and hoarding and growing money, but it's still just an addiction. And it's still just a show of not enough. In reality, you get to $1 million and you realize you can't retire. You can't actually stop. This isn't actually going to maintain itself. And you have to keep going and going and going. And you can have an interest in investing. You can have an interest in money. You can have an interest in $1 million and it be an okay thing. But it needs to have balance. Just like I kept throwing myself into relationships where I was getting taken advantage of, don't throw yourself at $1 million and get it taken advantage of. Don't be a martyr to your job. Don't be a slave to that $1 million and keep yourself in a pressure cooker of stress and sleeplessness and long work hours and having no life except devotion to the almighty altar of $1 million. Because in reality, it's not the most important life decision you will make. And in reality, it's not enough. Destroying yourself for that $1 million or for that financial goal is automatically like defeating the point. The point is supposed to be personal fulfillment. And if $1 million helps you get to that personal fulfillment, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But it needs to be in balance. It needs to be a mutual relationship.